hand it over to Christina and Darrell, we just wanted to go through our housekeeping slides. Here's our quick agenda, nothing out of the ordinary. For Q&A, feel free to go to Slido. The code is at the bottom also of all of the slides. So feel free to, once Darrell and Christina get started, feel free to pop your questions in there and people can upvote them, and we can just go through the Q&A using that. I think it's also fine. We can have people like unmute if they want to ask a question. But I thought that was really a great way to do Q&A last time. So we're gonna do that again. And this is us. If you don't know us already, I'm Lauren, and I run marketing operations at Trade.io, and I've just been co-leading with Amy in the SF Mug for, I don't know, just a couple months, right, Amy?
Yeah.
Yeah. You want to say anything, Amy?
Yeah, I'm Amy Goldfine. I run marketing operations at Iterable, based out of San Francisco. I've been co-leading the mug for about a year. Super excited to have Lauren with me. Excited to see you all. I think this is probably our last mug of the year, but we're gonna start off with a bang in January. We've got some really good topics coming up. So we're excited to have you guys, and thank you all for taking your lunch time to be with us.
So just a quick review of our house rules, which probably most of us are familiar with. But you know, the idea of the Marketo user groups is that they are user focused and that they're a safe space for all of us, which means we have to avoid sales pitches and self-promotion, and just be careful about contacting people outside of the user group, unless they've like specifically said they wanted you to. And to please not share any information like shared in the mug outside of the mug. And then, Amy, were you going to talk about Purple Select a little bit?
I can talk about Purple Select. For those of you guys who don't know, this is Marketo's like online advocacy portal, and you can take different challenges and get points. And even if you just log in every day and claim that daily bonus, that really starts to add up. But you can like read blog articles and answer questions and watch videos, and give feedback on things and get involved in different things. And then you can redeem points for all sorts of swag, everything from t-shirts to socks to like a Bluetooth speaker. If you get enough points, you can take your Marketo certified expert exam for free. So
nice.
I've gotten to that point. Wish I had it because I just took it. But yeah, so definitely it's just marketo.influitive.com. It's a really nice way to just, when you have a few minutes before meeting or you're waiting for something, just, you know, take a little brain break.
Cool. And just some upcoming opportunities for us. So applications are open for the 2021 champion program. And Christina, do you want to chat a little bit about what's cool about being a champion?
Sure. I am a current Marketo champion. There are some other champions on the line right now, both current and former. I think we would all agree that being a champion is amazing. You not only get awesome swag, which I'm personally invested in. There's Amy showing off her awesome swag. You also get a direct line to Marketo product people, support people, marketing experts. Your support tickets are tagged saying that you're a Marketo champion. So not that they get worked on faster, but you don't have to go through as many of the very simple questions because they assume you know what you're doing. And most importantly, you get a network of other amazing people to become friends with you, to give you advice and access to this huge knowledge bank. So I highly recommend that you apply.
Thanks, Christina. And we'll share out the slides via email at the end, but here's a list of all the upcoming mugs happening around the country.
The world.
The world? Ooh,
Yeah.
Australia.
Yeah, they just got that back going up.
That's awesome. Cool. And then we're ready to kick it over. So, Christina, I will make you, you now have remote control. I can't hear you.
Nope, you're
Nope.
muted.
You're muted.
You're muted.
I think she's saying she's not able to unmute herself.
Okay, hang on.
Really?
Weird.
Yeah,
It's
so I
'cause she
couldn't
doesn't
unmute
have
myself
control.
because
Yeah.
you gave me control of your computer, and so then I
Oh.
couldn't unmute myself.
Oh, weird.
But thank you, everybody. Not only is it tokens with friends, but it's some sort of weird charade.
Are you good now, Christina?
Yeah.
Okay, awesome.
So I think, okay. Darrell, if you could introduce yourself, and then I'll go next.
Yeah, hi everybody. I'm Darrell Alfonso. I'm Global Marketing Operations Manager at Amazon Web Services, champion alumni. Fun fact, I was the Los Angeles user group leader before I moved to Seattle. And Christina was one of the first speakers that I had. So that's how we actually know each other. So it's coming full circle. I will also say that Christina's resourcefulness made the very cool tokens with friends theme and the images. So thanks to her for that. But nice to meet everybody.
And total full circle, Darrell inviting me to the Los Angeles user group many years ago inspired me to start one in Santa Barbara.
Nice.
Because he made it seem so awesome and simple. I'm Christina Zuniga. I'm the Senior Marketing Operations Manager at Databricks. I'm a current champion, 2-time, and member of Fearless 50, or a past class of it. Nope, well, and it jumped ahead and behind. Awesome. So quick agenda. Darrell and I are going to be presenting on tokens. We'll do a brief overview of what a token is, but our goal is really intermediate and advanced uses. You can go out and find a lot of information on very basic token uses, but there's not a lot out there for how you take your token game to the next level. So we'll be going over a number of ways to do that. First, we're going to answer what our favorite tokens are. Darrell, you want to go first?
Mine is the system date token.
That's a good one. I was just saying at the beginning of this that I use text tokens a lot, but my personal favorite is the Salesforce campaign. And it's because I am horrible. The Salesforce campaign token will only look up Salesforce campaigns that have been marked active. And when I create a Salesforce campaign, I always forget to do that. So when I use this one, it won't show up because I haven't marked it active. So then I can secretly shame myself, mark it active, it comes through, and no one else has to know except for Warren, who I work with, who's apparently on this call, and now he knows my personal shame. But let's jump right in. So a little bit about tokens. If you're not as familiar with them, they're just sort of a placeholder that you can put into various assets, emails, landing pages, smart campaigns within Marketo, and they can do dynamic content. So when you see hi first name, and it fills in the person's name based off of their record, does dynamic content. It also does static content. So if you have ever used another marketing automation platform, I have, it is so painful when somebody makes a change. Great example, you have a webinar, somebody changes the time, you got to go to every email, operational and promo, you have to go to the landing page, maybe you have to go into your workflows, your smart campaigns, and make changes everywhere. And if you forget one, someone will find it and someone will blame you. With a token, all of that is just a token in all of those places, and you update it in one place. So simple, makes things scalable and easy. But those are pretty simple ones, right? So let's talk about ones that are a little more advanced than that. This is sort of our light intermediate. A great use case is within your emails. What can you tokenize aside from hello first name? Your from and reply to, make this super simple. Because usually when we send emails, we send them even if you have 12 promotions. Please, no one have 12 promotions of one thing. But if you did, we always send them from the same name, right? So tokenizing this makes it really simple so that you have that continuity across all of your promotions, all of your operational emails. Some kind of gotchas are that you should always include a default, because in Marketo, if the from or reply to is blank, it won't send the email. So a great example of this is you can see in my reply to that I'm using the lead owner email address. If for some reason somebody didn't have a lead owner, let's say they didn't sync to Salesforce, and so that field was magically blank, it happens, right? This actually would not send out for them. So having that default is critical to make sure that all of the emails go out every time. Another good piece is the subject line. You can see that I've numbered mine because I may have multiple subject lines for multiple promotions. I always include a default where I'm yelling at them, you forgot this. So during testing, they can feel that shame that I keep to myself when I forget to make my Salesforce campaigns active, but I share with others when they make mistakes. Side note, you have to have really, really good testing, because I think we've all gotten some version of this where it actually went out. Oh, that's not
Sorry.
me.
That was me.
No worries.
I was trying to
Where it
mute
actually,
myself, but I can't.
no worries. Where it actually went out with the bad subject line, right? So if you don't have really good testing in place, you don't want to put a token here. This is after you have a process and agreements, and especially if you have a decentralized model, lots of things in place to make sure that that doesn't go out live. There we go. Another great place to use this for emails, lots of people use tokens in their call to action, right? So you'll have your URL, and then that way in your promos, the button already has the token in it and people can just pop in their URL. A couple of notes on this. The first is always make sure your HTTPS is on the outside, and that's because that's how Marketo registers it as a link click. Otherwise, your link click report will be blank if your HTTPS is inside of your token. That was going to have some changes with Sky, but on the new user interface, they haven't rolled that piece out. So look for an update in the future when they do roll that out, because they made some changes within Sky that didn't come to the new unified user interface. But another really cool use case is putting your UTMs into your tokens. So this can make it really easy so that people remember to do UTMs, because how often, especially in a decentralized model where you have lots of users, do people forget this? All the time. But another great way of doing this, this is what I did at my last company, is we knew that source and medium were never going to change. So we didn't want to trust the users to actually put that in correctly. We had a lot of problems with spelling errors. So instead what we did is we had the token for the URL, and then medium and source were hard-coded, and just the campaign was all they had to fill in. And it made it a lot easier so that we captured that information, but gave them as little chance to mess it up as possible. So those are some good things for emails. Let's talk about smart campaigns. Most people are going to be familiar with this, appending in Marketo. If you have data in a field and somebody goes and updates that field using, say, a form, that data gets deleted, it gets overwritten. But what happens when you want to retain it? A great example of this are things like my message field goes to the SDRs. The SDR may have a note, but I also want information from my forms, like say my contact us form, to tie to that same message field. So all you have to do is, if that field is not empty, you put it in as its own token. So this beginning part here where it says lead message, and then you have a sort of middle field. In my case, it's blank question 7. That's what's in my contact us form. And I transfer that data over into lead message so that it writes upon itself. So it's appending constantly. You can do some fun stuff where you put in a token for the date and time that gets updated, so that the SDRs have a very clear chronological of that one person's message field. This is pretty standard. A lot of Marketo instances already have this. So let's take it one step further on a specific use case. Marketing technology. We know this is a new and growing field. And so we also know that some of our marketing technologies will not do what we want them to do when we want them to do it. I'm not going to call out any names. Feel free to judge this marketing technology if you know who it is, though. I had one particular one where I had this multi-select field. This was an app that my sales team could use, and they could indicate if somebody was a consumer, specialty, or emergent. So they could have one or they could have all three. I see that Phil says that he demands names. We'll chat afterwards. Essentially, the problem was they sent this data to Marketo with commas in between each of these. But in Salesforce, for a multi-select field, it had to have semicolons. That was the delimiter. And when I went back to this marketing technology and said, hey, you're doing it wrong. You need to use semicolons instead of commas. They were like, nah, you're wrong. I'm not wrong very often. I didn't believe them. Anyway, but so instead of arguing with them and spending a bunch of time or trying to find a different marketing technology when we had just signed a contract, instead, what I decided to do was to use Marketo to append the data. So even in weird offshoot use cases, this works for you. What I did is I connected this multi-select field in this mysterious marketing technology piece to my Marketo blank question. And then I used Marketo and I said, if that comes through with consumer, then add it to the Salesforce field and add the semicolon, so that it sort of sat in between and it translated this badly set up field in marketing technology and entered it perfectly into Salesforce. So even weird use cases, you just keep building on stuff. On to landing pages. I don't know about anybody else, but meta tags are such an issue for me with a decentralized model. People never remember to update them. So then you have bad SEO, all kinds of stuff can go wrong. So instead, what I did is I tokenized the whole meta tag section. They don't even have to open it. I don't even train them on how to open it. All I say is fill out these tokens. Makes it a lot easier. One note is in my old system, which this is a screenshot from, I numbered my tokens. I thought that was like an excellent idea so that they would be in a specific order. It is not an excellent idea and you should not do it. And it's because Marketo reads the first number. So it actually goes 1, 10, 11, 2, 3, 4. And then people get mad at you as if you can control that. So conclusion, probably don't number your tokens like I did. But let's talk about the OG tags. So if we go back really quick, you'll see Facebook OG tags. Basically, this is what pops up when you use social. And so you want, your picture and you want a description and all this stuff. If you aren't using LinkedIn Post Inspector to see how your landing page is going to post whenever you put it onto social media, you should. When Darrell's talking, I'll put in the link so that you have it. Basically what happens on LinkedIn is it caches your image and your description. So if you post it onto LinkedIn and it's wrong, and then you fix it, it's not going to fix for a couple of days. Meanwhile, you're going to be really embarrassed. And for some reason, all of your coworkers are going to suddenly be on LinkedIn at that exact moment. Instead, you post on the Post Inspector, see what it looks like, make sure it's good, and then you can post live on social. And it even gives you this really nice sort of summary so that you can make sure it looks nice. You can make sure all of the information is there and correct. Here is an example of what happens when you do not check Post Inspector before posting. You get bad image sizes or wrong names, things like that. So it can be really helpful to use. Another thing on landing pages, I don't know about everyone else here. I had this one user who I'm going to shame heavily right now. She just refused to go in and check her follow-up URL every single time. She just wouldn't do it. And then somehow it would get through QA, and always, it was like a director who saw it or a VP. I don't know how. So what I did is tokenize the follow-up URL so that instead of her having to go into the landing page, double click the form, and then put the follow-up URL, which she never remembered to do, all she had to do was put it into the token. You can even put your Marketo thank you landing page instead of an external URL. To set it up, all you have to do is do the follow-up type is external URL instead of the default, which is usually form defined or landing page. But one of the values of tokens is that you should really get to touch as little as possible, especially in a decentralized system. The whole goal is that you can do it all from your one My Token screen. And so if you do it that way and you tokenize everything, something like a landing page becomes super simple to set up and create and go live with. At this point, I am going to hand it over to Darrell, who's going to go into some more of our advanced tactics.
Thanks, Christina. Let me see.
Yeah, presenter control, or Lauren, do you need to give that?
Oh, I think it's just slow.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think it's working. Okay, thanks, Christina. Yeah, and then a final cool one that I thought was fun was to tokenize your brand colors in emails and landing pages. So that enables you to quickly do a rebrand if you need to. If you're not going to do a rebrand, it's not as useful, but I thought it was always a good one to include as part of pro tips. So next, a bulk of my presentation, or part of the presentation, is going to be on velocity scripting. So I have to preface this by saying that I'm actually not that much of a technical person. I think that on the call and Christina, for example, are much more technical than I am. So one of my things that I'm hoping to do is for people that are intimidated by velocity scripting and kind of not sure when or how to use it, or when's a good use case to use it. That's kind of, I'm hoping to bridge that gap. And for me, we use velocity scripting at AWS, but we use it in a very much of a sort of copy paste sort of way. And then if there are, technical use cases that are beyond my scope, and that happens often, that's something where I'm hoping that you can kind of emulate for yours. Okay, so explain it in a really simple way. So velocity scripting is a Java language that helps you customize emails. One thing to note is it only works for emails. So it doesn't work on landing pages, doesn't work on your website. It actually executes at the time of send. So when Marketo sends out the email. So that's why it's only used for emails. Besides some interesting hacks, the real value comes from the ability to reference custom objects such as product usage, event attendance, survey and discounts. So that's kind of a blanket statement, the interesting hacks part. What I mean by that is, there's some, I think, surface level things like capitalizing the first name or using the correct salutation like Mr. or Mrs., where I think that those are kind of nice to haves, but maybe they're not sort of business critical when you're trying to get out information. At AWS, most of the time, we only use velocity scripting when it comes to custom objects. I hope everybody kind of is familiar with custom objects. If you're not, it's essentially sort of an additional table that you create or connect to your instance, and then you can, oh, I lost it.
Lauren, I think the screen share stopped. Did we lose you? Yeah, I can share.
I might be able to also go to mine. If you need me to.
Yeah, I can pull it up. Hang on.
Okay.
No, but this is why there's multiple. Okay. Okay. Share screen. And I lost my window. There we go. Okay. Nope. Present, not share, Amy. Okay. We are down in velocity.
Yeah, nice.
Here?
Okay. And then, nice, good work. That was really quick. Let me
I'm
see if I
trying,
can.
man. All right, I gave you remote control. We good?
Way to go, Amy.
All right.
Super fast fix there.
This is live, coming to you live, guys.
I know. Right. So custom objects, like an additional table that you attach to your Marketo. So then, product usage is a good example where you don't want to put maybe all of that data onto the lead object because it's just tons and tons of fields. So you'll have, oh no, what happened?
Did we lose you again? Sorry. Okay, there we go. Okay. Wow.
Got it. It's okay. This happens. This happens. So let me see if I can do this. Anyway, custom objects. That's where it's really useful. Now, why don't many more people use velocity scripting? In my opinion, again, this is opinion, there's two reasons. One is you can actually get a lot of personalization mileage out of segmentations and dynamic content. So what I mean by this is, so for example, you can use velocity scripting to change an image in an email based on it lead's industry, what's that called? Retail or healthcare, right? But you can do the same thing with segmentations and dynamic content, and Marketo is great with that. And you probably want to do it with segmentations because of the reusability, right? You don't want to have to create velocity scripting and edit it each time. So it's actually easier to do it with segmentations. There are times when it's probably better to do velocity scripting, like if you don't want to make a new segmentation. But what I find is much of the time, you actually, for most use cases, you actually can use segmentations, and it's a good idea. Another reason, again, this is sort of my opinion, if you have a recurring need for velocity scripting, you will probably need to get someone that really knows what they're doing anyway. For example, we do an event every year called reInvent, and pre-COVID, we have about 30,000 attendees or so, and we customize the email for each person. We could have done it ourselves or kind of messed around with it, but just because you can really break things with velocity, we wanted to really leverage a resource that knows what they're doing. So I highly recommend, if you have a business critical use case for velocity, it's probably a good idea to hire some talent that really can do this from scratch. So here's an easy way that I think about it. And again, there's some people that if you already know velocity, oops, I need to go backwards. If you already know velocity, you might think this is a gross simplification, but I like to do a really distilled version just so that people get it. I like to think of it as a if-then statement, right? And there's other things you can do with it, but I feel like this is the easiest way to understand. So if this is true, then display this. And that's the way that I like to think of it. So it's just like a token, like a first name token, but using a script token. And then if the script is true, it'll display something. And you can really play with that. So if the gender is male, display Mr. If the state is California, West Coast. You can also include conditional things, which is why people like to use velocity. Like if 10 is less than 20, display smaller. So that conditional logic of less than and greater than is something that you can't really do with normal tokens. So that might be something that you might want to look into. So here's a fake example that is easy to understand. So if you do, so this is actually velocity script. And what this does is it returns the state flower. So you can see that it's made up of an if statement. If the lead equals Wisconsin, then this token will return wood violet, right, in the email. Else if the state's Iowa, it'll return wild rose. And then else, which is like the catch-all, would return we couldn't find your state's flower. One thing that I like to tell people is that, this is a very common way to explain how it works, but I wouldn't force it. If you don't feel the need to customize your email based on every single state, I wouldn't try to find a use case for velocity. That's not the way that I would do it. But I like this example because there's 50 plus different states, and you probably wouldn't want to make a segmentation for each state, right? Or maybe you do, but I wouldn't. So this is a good use case. So here's how this is built out, this specific code script. Sorry, I guess I don't have this figured out yet. Advance. All right, so that statement was made up of a if and then a else if. It's the lag. I'll click it and then it doesn't do anything, and then that's why.
I was having that problem too.
Oh, it's like, I think it's, okay, so let's go back. Let's go back. It's still going forward. Okay, so here's an easy way to think of how this script is structured. If you're familiar with segmentations in Marketo, this is set up in the same way. So if a statement is true, then return something. Else if means go to the next one. If this is true, then output something. And then else is the default catch-all. So in segmentations are a hierarchy of criteria, right? So the first one, you'll qualify for the first one that you match the criteria in segmentations. It's the same way with this sort of structure. If, else if, and then at the very end, else is default, the default segmentation, which is the catch-all. Okay, hope everybody understands that, because that was an easy way that I thought of it. Okay. And now we're going to advance. Amy, would you be able to just advance it for me and control it? I feel like it would be a little bit easier if you just do it. Thanks. Okay. Another example. Okay. Here's another thing that you can do is you can bring in the, you can reference things on the opportunity, and then you can customize your output based on volume, right? So if the expected revenue is greater than 10,000, output, you are one of our top customers. Else, don't do that, right? So that's a kind of cool thing where in regular tokens, you can't leverage those less than, greater than conditionals, but you can in velocity. So that might spur on some ideas to help you get there. I don't do this. I haven't seen this practical use case with the expected revenue thing, but if you're familiar, when you think about your own marketing, there might be something that you could do. Can you move ahead a slide, Amy? I think I'm probably running out of time because of all the, thanks, thank you. Okay, so here are things that I actually do and I've seen done, and they're practical use cases. Display event sessions that someone's registered for. And how that works is, again, there's a custom object where you are uploading or mass importing all of the leads that have registered for your event, and then the sessions that they've all registered for. And you're leveraging that like sort of many-to-many relationship, or one-to-many. I forget which one it is in this case, but one person can have multiple sessions and it's different for each person, right? So that's why a custom object is a good use case for that. Send someone a unique code to a survey, and send someone a unique code for another purpose like a discount or promotion. This is a super common one, and it's one that we do heavily at AWS, where we send them like $25 of AWS credit, and we do that through a custom object that we call survey. And we'll move forward. So let's talk about how to do the really simple one, like how to do the survey code. So the first thing you're gonna do is, when you're making a token, either at the program level or at the folder level, you drag the email script token onto the canvas, right? Just like any other token. And then you'll just put in your velocity script. So just like any other token, really. And then next slide. The editor looks like this. And you'll see on the right-hand side all of the objects that are referenceable to Marketo that you can use in your velocity. So, you know, off of the opportunity object, I found one called business platform. You just drag it onto the canvas too, and it'll put in the API name, right? And at this point, what I do is I leverage code that's already been created for me. And you can either do that from, again, if you have a developer, or we're going to share some resources where there's some like blog posts and like Sanford Whitman's blog where they have some templates for you, and you just paste it in here and then customize it. So that's how I do it. And then advance. Cool. So this is one of the ones that we use for to send specific promotional codes to people using Marketo. This one, we found it was better to do it using a for loop, which you can see like the for each. And I didn't really cover that. But when I'm training users to do campaigns with promotional codes and that leverage the custom object to display like how much you know, credits they're getting, what their unique code is, when it expires, all they have to do is edit that specific section, the one I have here at the top. And they just input that with their promotion name that they've uploaded into the custom object. And then it's more of just plug and play. So this is a good one. And I know that, you know, we'll share this deck out so you can copy this if you need to. And advance. Right, so those were really simple ones. Again, if you're familiar with velocity, you know that I'm skipping a bunch of stuff, but I'm hoping for the people that have zero knowledge of velocity, then, you know, that'll help you sort of bridge that gap and not be as intimidated when people talk about it, because it's really not that. I think it's just like any other language where, you know, it's customizing something. So here's some advanced functions on the left. But we'll share this out. These are the resources on the right. And then by paid resources, I mean, you know, like you're connecting with an agency or a freelancer or someone that has that Java talent that can, you know, at least make the base code for you that you can customize. So hope that helps. I think that's the end of my section. Summary. Christina, do you want to come back and talk about the summary?
Sure. So just kind of to wrap it all up and bring it back together, tokens help you scale, make you more efficient, can make everything more consistent. Highly recommend using them if you're not using them today. If you are using them today, do cool things like velocity, now that Darrell showed us how. Always include a default in your tokens because otherwise some things don't work. And go forth and velocity today.
Awesome. Thank you guys so much. That was such a enlightening presentation. There's also been some really great conversations going on in the chat. It looks like some people have shared some different resources. So I will compile those and put them in the follow-up email that goes out so that we have them in case you missed the links or didn't download them. We're going to switch to Slido if I can figure out how to do that, because after several years of using Zoom, I still mess it up sometimes. Okay, we're going to go into present mode, and I've lost my Zoom toolbar. There we go. Share. Okay, you guys can see my Slido. Okay, so first question is regarding landing pages. Is there any downside to tokenizing the meta tags for landing pages? Any functionality gets lost? This is going back to something Christina talked about. Christina, can you take this one?
Sure. I'm not aware of any functionality that you would lose by doing that. I've done this since I first started using Marketo and never had any problems. Darrell, are you aware of anything?
I don't think so. Nothing comes to mind. I mean, I think that as long as you're testing, you'll be fine. I think that I'd be a little bit worried that, you know, for people that aren't sort of checking their meta tags to make sure that they're correct each time, it can kind of easily go rogue if you just tokenize everything. But I think that that's a process thing. So I don't think technically there's a functionality that's lost. Well, unless you're putting like scripts in there. But I think you could do that with tokens too. So I think it's fine.
One thing I did want to mention, Christina, you were saying that like you got into trouble numbering your tokens. So I think one way that we were talking about in the chat, if you guys missed it, that you can overcome that is do the 2-digit numbering, just the same way you would number your smart campaigns. You do like 01, 02, 03. But I will give the caveat that you should leave some space. So for a webinar, let's say a 1 through 05 is like the webinar title, day, date, start time, end time, then maybe that's a 1 through 05 and then leave a gap. And then your next set, which may be your presenter information, start with 10, 11, 12. That way, if you decide you need to add more information that needs to go with the first group, you have some buffer space. But I think numbering tokens is great. It's been a game changer for me, especially because start comes before end, but E comes before S. So you will never paste your start time and your end time in backwards. But yeah, I just wanted to throw that out there because I think that can be super helpful for sure. But I love this idea of tokenizing landing pages. You guys just have so many cool hacks here. This is exciting. And just wanted to remind everybody, you can put your questions in at slido.com with the code hashtag SFMUG November 2020. Okay, and next question. Any tips or ideas around trigger tokens? This is something we didn't cover specifically. But love to hear what you guys have to say about that.
I'll go first. So there's a really great doc page that Marketo has that shows all of the trigger tokens available. The only one I can think of off of the top of my head that I thought was unique to my last setup at my previous company, because we were super into interesting moments and using MSI, was I did the trigger subject for unsubscribe from email, so that the salesperson, if somebody unsubscribed, they could even see the name of the subject line instead of just program name, because they never picked up on what the program was. But the subject line made it really clear what we were sending about. Do you have any cool hacks, Darrell?
Not really. We use the trigger tokens for interesting moments, which I guess is the most common use case. I'm not sure, but I think that's the only way. We only use trigger tokens to customize interesting moments. I can't think of anything else we do.
Anybody else have ways that they use trigger tokens in a creative way? Just feel free to come off of mute and let us know.
I have a really silly question. Are trigger tokens basically just using tokens in your trigger commands?
That's not a silly question. So they're special system tokens that pull things like program name and things like that. So I added a link that has a list of all of them.
It shows like the cause. So interesting moments is a really good example. If like your trigger is filled out form and you want an interesting moment, you can put which form they filled out, or at like in the interesting moment. But there's some cool things you can do. So I have a ton of alerts set up for errors. So webhook errors, webinar registration errors, and you can use the trigger name token. I think it's trigger name. It's either trigger name or trigger. It's either name or trigger name. I can't remember which one, but use that. So I get an error that says webhook error for webhook, and then the name of the smart campaign that triggered it. And that way I immediately know, oh, it was my Marketo to Slack webhook, or it was my Marketo to Zapier for my webinar platform webhook, etc. But yeah, they like kind of they explain them in the docs only for interesting moments, but there's lots of cool things that you can do with them. It's a good question, Alicia. Okay.
I use them in a way that hasn't been discussed. Can you
Yeah.
guys hear me? Because my Zoom window sort of
No, we can hear you.
okay, it went away. Well, I use program.
Oh, Denise, we lost you.
How about now?
Yep, we're good.
Thanks. So I use program status changes to drive a set of lead source attribution campaigns. So because of that, I use trigger.name to populate the lead source detail, because that's the name of the program that, well, in my schema, the lead source detail is the name of the program.
Oh,
and
yeah.
so trigger.name populates that in lead source detail.
That is really smart. Anybody else have cool trigger tokens that they're using?
I don't know if it's cool or not, but we have Marketo. We don't have Marketo Sales Insights set up, so we use Marketo alerts, and so we use the trigger for if a web page or a form was filled out to populate the web page in a new field, so that we can alert that to the sales team which page they were looking at when they filled out a form.
That is very cool. I love that idea. I think that's really creative. Anybody else? Okay. Next question is, any velocity scripting pitfalls you know of? What can go wrong?
Yeah, so this is the way that I think about it is, and we talked to Marketo when we were sort of formulating which of our programs should use velocity and which one shouldn't. If it's beyond the if then sort of script structure that I can't really understand, then I would really kind of lean on, you know, having a developer at least look over your code. There is and this hasn't happened to us, but we were forewarned by Marketo that with the for loops, you could lock up Marketo if you do it incorrectly. Like it gets into like an infinite loop. So it could, you know, really pause one of your sends. So that's kind of the way that I think about it. Another thing that can kind of prevent the scripting pitfalls is to, you know, we do testing for each lead. So in the similar way that you test leads based on their segmentation that they're in, you can test leads that have different custom object information and see how that information populates. And that's how we kind of work around those or make sure that we don't have any sort of glaring problems in our programs. But besides that, I can't think of anything else. Maybe someone else has other areas of where velocity can go rogue.
Okay, I think we're gonna make this the last question because I want to leave time at the end for if anybody's hiring or if anybody is looking for a job and is willing to, you know, share publicly, just so we can kind of get that. Okay, so I think our last question is an interesting one. When you're looking for talent, do you hire a velocity developer or look for a Java developer and then give them the velocity documentation?
So the way that we do it is we look for Marketo talent that also has like velocity skills. That's kind of the way that we do it. I think that you could go the other way and look for a freelancer maybe that knows Java and then can pick up velocity. But it was just, I think it's just a lot faster, the ramp up time to work with like an agency, for example,